Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight we're standing in the scorching heat of ancient Babylon, where the morning sun already bakes the mud brick walls, and you're about to discover why your modern legal rights would mean absolutely nothing here. You're jolted awake by aggressive pounding on your door, not the polite knock of a neighbor, but the thunderous demand of temple guards who've come to drag you before the judges. And trust me, you're probably not walking away from this one unscathed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments below. Alright, let's begin the story. Your heart pounds as the wooden door shudders under another blow. Through the cracks, you glimpse bronze armor glinting in the dawn light. The guards don't wait for permission. They burst inside, filling your modest home with the smell of leather and sweat. By order of the judges, one barks in Akkadian, though his accent tells you he's from the northern districts. You will answer charges in the House of Justice. You barely have time to grab your best tunic, the one without visible patches, before rough hands seize your arms. Your neighbors peer through their doorways, some with sympathy, others with that peculiar satisfaction people show when disaster visits someone else's threshold. The narrow street echoes with your stumbling footsteps as they march you past the baker's shop, where you bought bread just yesterday, past the scribe's stall where you once paid good silver to have a contract written. The city awakens around you in a cacophony of braying donkeys, merchants hawking dates, and children splashing through puddles of last night's chamber pot offerings. But today, these familiar sounds feel distant, muffled by the blood rushing in your ears. You try to remember what this could be about. That land dispute with your brother-in-law, the complaint about your goat eating the neighbor's barley, or something worse, something you don't even know you've done. As you're hustled through the market square, you pass under the shadow of the great ziggurat, its step sides reaching toward Marduk himself. Some historians still argue whether these dawn arrests were standard procedure or reserved for serious crimes. But right now, academic debates feel rather pointless. A merchant selling imported cedar oil calls out his prices, oblivious to your plight. Life continues for everyone else while yours teeters on the edge of an abyss. The guards don't speak except to grunt when you stumble. Their silence terrifies you more than threats would. In Babylon, you've learned. The law doesn't need to explain itself until you're already standing before the judges. You think of your family. Did the guards wake them too? Are they following? Or have they been warned to stay away? Your youngest daughter had a fever last night. You'd promised to fetch the herb woman today. The House of Justice looms ahead, its entrance flanked by carved lions whose stone eyes seem to follow your approach. You've passed this building 1,000 times, never imagining you'd enter it as a defendant. The courtyard beyond bustles with scribes, petitioners, and others who, like you, wear the haunted expression of the accused. Some clutch clay tablets, evidence, perhaps, or contracts they hope will save them. You have nothing but the clothes on your back and a prayer to Shamash, God of justice, though you're not entirely sure he's listening this morning. The guards release you at the threshold, and suddenly you're on your own, expected to know where to go, what to do. The cool darkness inside offers no comfort, only the weight of centuries of verdicts, some just, some corrupt, all final. You take a shaky breath and step forward into a legal system that predates your own by 4,000 years, where divine will and human law intertwine like vipers, and where you, my friend, are about to discover just how powerless a person can be when the full weight of Babylonian justice turns its attention to you. The interior of the courthouse swallows you whole, its vastness designed to make mortals feel appropriately insignificant. Columns thicker than ancient date palms stretch toward a ceiling lost in shadow, and between them, shafts of sunlight illuminate swirling dust motes that dance like tiny spirits. You follow the flow of people deeper inside, past alcoves where scribes huddle over their tablets, styluses scratching cuneiform into wet clay with the persistence of termites in wood. A court official, distinguishable by his striped robe and the cylinder seal hanging from his neck, points you toward a waiting area. Here, dozens of accused sit on stone benches worn smooth by generations of nervous fidgeting. You claim a spot between a woman clutching a baby and a merchant whose fine clothes can't hide the tremor in his hands. Nobody speaks. In Babylon's courts, even casual conversation might be twisted into evidence against you. The walls around you tell the story of law's evolution in this place. Carved reliefs depict Hammurabi receiving the law code from Shamash himself, the sun god's rays emanating from his shoulders as he hands down justice from the divine realm. It's a none too subtle reminder that when you challenge the court, you challenge heaven itself. Other panels show previous kings dispensing verdicts, their faces serene while condemned prisoners grovel at their feet. You wonder if your face will soon match theirs. Through an archway, you glimpse the main courtroom, where 3 judges sit elevated on a platform. They wear tall hats that mark their status, and their beards are oiled and braided in the fashion of those who never dirty their hands with common labor. Before them, a man pleads his case, gesturing wildly while a scribe records every word. The judges' faces remain impassive as carved stone. Historians still argue whether these judges were truly independent or merely puppets of temple and palace. But watching them now, they seem less human than the statues flanking their bench. You've heard stories, of course. Everyone in Babylon knows someone who's faced the judges. Your neighbor's cousin was accused of stealing sheep. He underwent the river ordeal and drowned, which proved his guilt retroactively. Your wife's sister disputed an inheritance with her brothers and won, but only after swearing an oath so terrifying that one brother dropped dead from fear before completing it. The gods, it seems, take an active interest in Babylonian legal proceedings. The woman beside you shifts her baby to her other arm and catches your eye. "First time?" she whispers, though even this small kindness carries risk. You nod. "The waiting is worst," she continues. "Once you're before them, at least you know." Her baby fusses, and she produces a clay feeding bottle from her sack. The mundane act of feeding a child in this place of judgment strikes you as both brave and heartbreaking. A name rings out, not yours, thank Marduk, and the merchant beside you rises on unsteady legs. As he walks toward his fate, you notice the wet stain spreading down his leg. Nobody laughs. Tomorrow, it could be any of you losing control of your bladder when faced with judges who wield the power of gods and kings combined. The divine nature of Babylonian law isn't just painted on walls or carved in stone. It permeates everything. When you entered this building, you passed under the watchful eyes of Shamash, Marduk, and Ishtar. Their statues guard doorways and alcoves, reminding all who enter that perjury isn't just a crime against man, but a personal insult to the gods. Some say the statues' eyes follow liars, that their stone lips whisper accusations to the judges in dreams. You're not sure you believe it, but then again, you're not sure you don't. Your stomach growls, reminding you that you haven't eaten since yesterday's evening meal. The guards gave you no time for breakfast, and who knows how long you'll wait here. Some cases, you've heard, stretch across days. Witnesses must be summoned, evidence examined, oaths administered. The baby next to you has fallen asleep, blissfully unaware that his mother faces charges that could see her sold into slavery or worse. Time moves strangely in this place. The sunbeams tracking across the floor provide the only clock, and they seem to crawl. You think about praying but wonder which god to address. Shamash for justice, Marduk for mercy, Nabu for the wisdom of scribes who might record your words favorably. In the end, you settle for a general plea to any deity who might be listening and not otherwise occupied with cosmic affairs. A commotion near the entrance breaks your spiraling thoughts. The crowd parts like barley before a scythe, and through the gap strides your accuser. You recognize him immediately, Bel-Shah-Usur, the merchant who claims you cheated him in last month's wool transaction. He's dressed for theatre, wearing his finest robes with gold thread that catches the light, his beard freshly hennaed, and he's brought an entourage that would make a minor prince jealous. 2 scribes flank him, carrying armfuls of tablets that presumably document your supposed crimes. Behind them, a parade of witnesses files in. Some you recognize as his regular business partners. Others are strangers whose presence here can't mean anything good for you. One man carries a sealed jar. Another clutches what looks like a torn piece of fabric. Evidence. You realize with growing dread, though evidence of what, you can't imagine. Bel-Shah-Usur's eyes scan the waiting area until they land on you. His lips curl into a smile that would make a crocodile proud. He doesn't approach, that would be beneath his dignity, but he ensures you see him conferring with his scribes, pointing at tablets, shaking his head gravely as if the magnitude of your crimes pains him personally. It's all performance, and everyone knows it. But in Babylonian courts, performance matters almost as much as truth. The woman beside you leans away slightly, as if your legal troubles might be contagious. You can't blame her. Association with the accused can drag the innocent into the mire. You've seen it happen. Witnesses becoming defendants. Character supporters finding themselves under scrutiny. The law here spreads like floodwater, seeping into every crack and crevice of related lives. Your accuser's theatrical preparation continues. He produces a small vial from his robes and makes a show of anointing his forehead with oil, a sign of ritual purity before giving testimony. One of his scribes unrolls a leather scroll and begins reading from it in a voice loud enough to carry throughout the waiting area. It's a list of your alleged crimes, each one more elaborate than the last. According to this account, you didn't just shortchange him on wool weight, you conspired with demons, falsified temple records, and probably caused last year's poor harvest while you were at it. Some historians still argue whether such dramatic accusations were typical or reserved for special cases, but from your bench, academic distinctions feel rather meaningless. What matters is that everyone's watching now, measuring you against these claims, wondering if you really do have the look of someone who traffics with evil spirits. You want to stand up, to shout that it's all lies, that Bel-Shah-Usur is the one who tried to pass off inferior wool as premium grade, but you know better. Outbursts in the waiting area mark you as guilty of something, even if not the original charges. The judges value composure, viewing emotional displays as evidence of a disturbed spirit, possibly possessed. So you sit, hands clenched in your lap, watching this elaborate character assassination unfold. The merchant's preparation reaches new heights of absurdity. He produces a small clay figurine, supposedly representing you, and hands it to one of his witnesses with great ceremony. The man holds it up, turning it so everyone can see the crude features. "This was found buried under the threshold of my master's warehouse," he announces, "wrapped in bat hair and inscribed with cursed tablets." The crowd murmurs. Curse figurines are serious business in Babylon, the kind of evidence that can turn a simple commercial dispute into a capital crime. You know for a fact that figurine looks nothing like you. Its nose is too big, its eyes too close together. But nobody's examining it for artistic accuracy. What matters is the story it tells. The narrative Belshazzar is weaving with all the skill of a temple prostitute working for tips. He's transformed a straightforward disagreement over wool quality into an epic battle between righteous merchant and malevolent sorcerer. His final witness shuffles forward, an elderly woman whose clouded eyes suggest she couldn't identify her own grandchildren in bright daylight. Yet here she is, ready to testify that she saw you at midnight performing strange rituals by the canal, summoning shadows that writhe like living things. You've never seen this woman before in your life, but that won't matter once she speaks her piece before the judges. The waiting area has become a stage, and you're the unwitting star of a drama you never auditioned for. Other accused watch with sympathy or relief, sympathy that you're facing such elaborate charges, relief that their own accusers seem modest by comparison. The baby starts crying again, its wails echoing off stone walls like a prophecy of doom. Your name finally echoes through the hall, pronounced by a herald whose voice could wake the dead in the underworld. Rising on legs that feel like water reeds, you follow the court official through massive cedar doors into the main courtroom. The space opens before you like the maw of some ancient beast, circular and vast, with galleries rising in tiers where spectators lean forward eagerly. Public trials in Babylon double as entertainment, and today you're the main attraction. The 3 judges sit elevated before you, their ceremonial beards gleaming with fresh oil. The center judge, distinguished by a larger hat and more elaborate robes, fixes you with eyes that have seen every possible human failing. To their right sits a statue of Shamash, positioned so the morning sun illuminates it perfectly, creating an effect that makes the god appear to glow with inner fire. To their left, a similar statue of Marduk looms, and between them, the message is clear. Divine authority watches these proceedings. State your name and district. The center judge commands. You comply, your voice cracking slightly on your patronymic. A scribe records your words, stylus dancing across wet clay. Everything here will be preserved, baked into permanent record, stored in temple archives where future generations might read about your case and shake their heads at your folly or misfortune. Belshazzar stands at the plaintiff's position, radiating confidence like heat from a kiln. The judge nods to him. Present your evidence. Your accuser bows deeply, then launches into his prepared speech. The wool transaction, in his telling, becomes an elaborate fraud that threatened the very foundations of Babylonian commerce. You listen, amazed at how skillfully he twists every detail. That delay in delivery, clearly intentional sabotage, the slight discrepancy in weight, evidence of a broader conspiracy. But then comes the interesting part. I call upon the river to judge between us, Belshazzar announces, and the crowd rustles with excitement. The river ordeal, you'd heard of it, but never imagined facing it yourself. In this ancient test, the accused must jump into the Euphrates. If you sink, you're guilty. If you float, the river god has proclaimed your innocence. Historians still argue whether this was meant literally or symbolically, but the guards already moving toward the courtroom's river door suggest a very literal interpretation awaits. Wait, the center judge raises his hand. First, we examine mortal evidence. He gestures to Belshazzar's scribes, who step forward with their tablets. One by one, they present documents, receipts, witness testimonies, even a supposed confession from your business partner, who you suddenly realize hasn't been seen at the market for 3 days. Each tablet is passed to the court scribe, who verifies the seal impressions and reads key passages aloud. The evidence seems damning until you notice something. One tablet bears a seal impression you recognize. It belongs to a scribe who died 2 months ago. You've attended his funeral feast. Yet here's a document supposedly written by him last week. Do you dare point this out? Accusing your accuser of forgery carries its own risks in this system, where social status weighs as heavily as truth. Now, the judge continues, the spiritual evidence. This is where things get truly surreal. A temple priestess enters, carrying a bowl of water and barley. She'll perform lecanomancy, divination by observing how oil moves on water's surface. The patterns will reveal divine opinion on your guilt. You watch, mesmerized despite yourself, as she drips sesame oil into the bowl. It spreads in ripples that she studies intently, occasionally making marks on a small tablet. Your throat feels like the desert beyond the city walls. No one offers water to the accused. Another small cruelty in a system designed to break you down. The priestess finishes her observation and whispers to the judges. Their expressions reveal nothing, but Belshazzar's smile wavers slightly. Perhaps the oil patterns weren't as condemnatory as he'd hoped. The accused may speak, the center judge announces, and suddenly every eye fixes on you. This is your moment, your only chance to counter the narrative spun so elaborately against you. But where do you begin? Do you attack the forged document? Challenge the witnesses? Or do you take a different approach entirely, perhaps offering to swear an oath so terrible that even contemplating falsehood would mean certain death? The silence stretches as you gather your thoughts. In the gallery, someone coughs, a baby cries and is quickly hushed. The statues of the gods seem to lean in, waiting to hear what defense you'll mount against charges that began with wool and somehow escalated to sorcery and cosmic disruption. The stylus hovers over fresh clay, ready to record whatever words might save or damn you in this halls where justice and divinity dance their ancient, dangerous dance. You clear your throat and begin to speak, but the center judge immediately raises his hand. Before testimony, he intones, we must establish the spiritual authority of this court. He nods to a temple attendant, who brings forward a clay liver, not real, thankfully, but a detailed model covered in cuneiform inscriptions. This is the Baru priest's tool, used to divine whether the gods favor these proceedings. The judge examines various marks and nodules on the clay organ with the intensity of a merchant inspecting pearls. The ritual takes an eternity. Each bump and indentation on the model liver corresponds to cosmic significance that you can't begin to fathom. The judge consults with his colleagues, pointing at specific features, cross-referencing with a tablet that appears to be a guide to liver reading. Historians still argue whether these judges truly believed in hepatoscopy or merely used it as political theatre, but their furrowed brows suggest either genuine faith or exceptional acting skills. Finally satisfied with the liver's pronouncements, the center judge turns his attention back to earthly matters. But now you notice the dynamic between the three judges more clearly. The one on the left keeps glancing toward the palace door, as if expecting royal messengers. The one on the right fingers prayer beads dedicated to Marduk, his lips moving in silent supplication. The center judge, meanwhile, seems torn between these two poles of power, secular and sacred. The accused may now speak, he repeats, but adds, "Be aware that King Nebuchadnezzar has issued new decrees regarding commercial fraud. The palace takes special interest in cases involving," he pauses, consulting a tablet, "wool merchants who supply the royal workshops." Your heart sinks. Belshazzar supplies wool to the palace. No wonder he's so confident. You begin your defense, carefully navigating between truth and survival. Yes, there was a wool transaction. No, you didn't shortchange anyone. The weights were verified by 3 witnesses at the time of sale. But even as you speak, you see the judge on the left making notes, probably calculating how your conviction might please the palace administrators. The judge on the right seems more interested in the spiritual implications. Did you perform the proper rituals before the transaction? Did you offer appropriate sacrifices to ensure commercial success? The center judge interrupts your account. The palace requires all wool merchants to maintain specific quality standards, he says. Can you prove your wool met these standards? This is new. There was no such requirement when you made the sale. But pointing out ex post facto laws won't help you here. The kings of Babylon retroactively apply laws whenever convenient, and judges who object find themselves reassigned to rural districts where the most exciting case involves stolen chickens. Temple politics intrude from another direction. A priest enters the courtroom, whispering urgently to the right-hand judge. You catch fragments. The high priestess, concerned about temple revenues, apparently. Your case has implications for temple taxes on wool sales. If you're convicted, it sets a precedent that might affect how temples collect their share from commercial transactions. Suddenly, you're not just defending yourself against Belshazzar. You're a pawn in the eternal chess game between palace and temple. The center judge looks increasingly uncomfortable. You can see him calculating. Convict you and please the palace, but anger the temples. Or acquit you and risk royal displeasure. He calls for a recess, ostensibly to consult legal precedents. But everyone knows he's buying time to determine which way the political winds blow strongest today. During the break, you're left standing in the courtroom while the judges retire to their chambers. Guards ensure you don't move or speak to anyone. Belshazzar smirks from across the room, confident that his palace connections will prevail. But you notice one of the temple scribes approaching him, tablet in hand. Whatever's written there wipes the smile from his face. Perhaps the temples have their own records about his wool quality. The spectators in the galleries whisper among themselves, placing bets on your fate. You hear someone offering 3-to-1 odds against you, which seems optimistic given the circumstances. A merchant mentions that just last week, a similar case ended with the accused being assigned to royal work gangs, technically not slavery, but close enough that the distinction hardly matters. When the judges return, the center one wears the expression of a man who swallowed sour beer. After consulting with both palace representatives and temple authorities, he begins, and you know immediately that some compromise has been reached behind closed doors. Neither side will get exactly what they want, which means you'll probably suffer some middle ground of punishment that satisfies no one but keeps the political balance intact. The court recognizes, he continues, that this case touches upon matters of both royal commerce and sacred law. Therefore, we must proceed with additional tests to determine divine will in this matter. More delays, more rituals, more opportunities for politics to shape what should be simple justice. You're beginning to understand why Babylonians say the only winners in court are the scribes who get paid regardless of outcome. The doors burst open with theatrical timing, and your witnesses stumble in, if you can call them that. Your brother-in-law leads the group, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, possibly including the underworld. Behind him, the elderly woman who saw you complete the wool transaction shuffles forward, squinting at everything as if the courtroom exists in perpetual fog. Last comes your neighbor, the one whose testimony could save you. Except he's already sweating through his tunic, and the proceedings haven't even resumed. State your relationship to the accused. The center judge commands your brother-in-law. The man shifts his weight, glancing between you and the exits. He married my sister, he mumbles, then adds hastily, but I maintain my own household. We don't share business ventures. The speed with which he distances himself from you speaks volumes. In Babylon, guilt by association isn't just social, it's legal. Your neighbor steps forward next, and you remember why you asked him to testify. He was there when you weighed the wool, saw Belshazzar accept the measures without complaint, but as he opens his mouth to speak, Belshazzar's scribe produces a tablet. Before this witness testifies, the scribe announces, the court should know he owes my master 40 shekels of silver from a previous transaction. The judges exchange glances. A debtor testifying against his creditor. The conflict of interest hangs in the air like incense smoke. Your neighbor's face cycles through several shades of pale as he realizes his testimony might result in his debt being called in immediately. That is, he stammers, looking desperately at you for guidance you can't give. Speak truthfully, the right-hand judge intones, for Shamash sees all deception. It's a reminder that perjury in Babylonian courts doesn't just risk earthly punishment, it invites divine retribution. Your neighbor swallows hard and begins his account, but his words emerge stilted, careful. Yes, he was present at the transaction. Yes, weights were measured, but when pressed for details, his memory conveniently fails. The sun was very bright that day, he offers weakly, hard to see clearly. The elderly woman's testimony proves even more disastrous. She begins confidently enough, describing the wool transaction in detail. Then she mentions seeing you at the market last week, during the festival of Ishtar. The center judge leans forward. Which festival of Ishtar? She blinks, confused. The spring festival, of course. The problem? It's currently late summer. Her temporal confusion undermines everything else she says, and Belshazzar's scribes eagerly record every contradictory statement. Historians still argue whether witness testimony in ancient Mesopotamia was generally reliable or corrupted by social pressures. But watching your witnesses crumble, the answer seems obvious. Your brother-in-law attempts damage control by praising your character, but carefully avoids any statement that might legally bind him to your fate. He maintains his household adequately, he offers, which might be the faintest praise ever recorded on a court tablet. The parade of character witnesses continues, each more reluctant than the last. Your local barber testifies that you pay your bills eventually. The bread seller notes you've never been caught stealing, which seems like setting the bar remarkably low. Even the neighborhood drunk, who you once helped home from a tavern, manages only to confirm that you exist and occasionally show kindness to pathetic individuals, hardly a ringing endorsement. But then something unexpected happens. A woman enters the courtroom, unveiled and walking with the confidence of someone who has nothing to lose. You recognize her, the widow who runs the tavern near the canal. She's not on anyone's witness list. "I request to speak," she announces, and her voice carries the authority of someone used to handling rowdy customers. The judges confer. Unexpected witnesses are technically allowed, but they disrupt the carefully choreographed nature of Babylonian trials. Finally, the center judge nods. "State your purpose." She straightens her shoulders. "I've done business with both men. I know who honors their word and who doesn't." The courtroom rustles with interest. Tavern keepers see everything in Babylon. They're the unofficial record keepers of neighborhood disputes. She turns to face Belshazzar directly. 3 months ago, you tried to pay your beer debt with wool. You swore it was finest quality, blessed by temple priests. When I had it examined, half was moth-eaten, the rest so coarse it could sand wood. The accusation hangs in the air like a thunderclap. Your accuser's face darkens, but before he can object, she produces a small tablet from her robes. "I kept the receipt and samples." The courtroom erupts. Belshazzar's scribes huddle, frantically consulting their tablets. The judges lean forward with sudden interest. Your failing case has just taken an unexpected turn, and all because in Babylon, everyone's reputation eventually comes home to roost. The tavern keeper's testimony might not directly address your case, but it paints your accuser in new colors, and not flattering ones. The center judge pounds his ceremonial staff against the floor, bringing order to the chaos. "The court will examine these new allegations," he declares, though his tone suggests he'd rather be examining his evening meal. The tavern keeper's testimony has complicated what should have been a straightforward conviction. And complicated cases mean longer days and greater chances of offending someone powerful. First, the judge continues, we must address the original charges, the penalty for commercial fraud, as decreed in the law codes, ranges from financial restitution to more permanent solutions. He doesn't need to elaborate. Everyone knows the more permanent solutions involve things like impalement, drowning, or being burned alive, depending on the severity and the judge's disposition after his morning beer. Belshazzar rises, his earlier confidence cracking like sun-dried mud. The woman's testimony is irrelevant to this case, he insists. Whatever transactions occurred at her establishment, but the left-hand judge, the one with palace connections, interrupts. Pattern of behavior speaks to character. Continue. You realize with growing hope that perhaps the palace isn't as firmly in Belshazzar's pocket as you thought. The discussion of penalties proceeds with bureaucratic thoroughness. A scribe reads from Hammurabi's code, though everyone knows these ancient laws serve more as guidelines than gospel. If a merchant gives money to an agent for trading, and the agent deceives him, the agent shall return sixfold to the merchant. But wait, who's the merchant, and who's the agent in your case? The terminology tangles like rope in water. Your mind drifts to the worst possibilities. You've seen the drowning pools at the river's edge, where those condemned for certain crimes meet their fate. The water is kept deliberately murky. Some say to hide the bones of previous victims. Others claim it's to prevent the condemned from seeing their own reflection one last time. For theft of temple property, they still practice burning, though historians still argue whether this was literal immolation or branding. Having smelled the execution grounds on a hot day, you're fairly certain it's the former. There's also the matter of compensation. The right-hand judge interjects, representing temple interests. If fraud is proven, The temples lose their rightful tax portion. This must be considered in any penalty. Of course, it always comes back to money. The gods might demand justice, but their earthly representatives prefer silver. The tavern keeper, still standing with remarkable poise, adds another detail. When I confronted Bel-Shah-Usur about the inferior wool, he threatened to have my establishment closed through his palace connections. The left-hand judge's eyebrows rise. Using palace influence for personal vendettas is technically legal, but socially gauche, like wearing your finest jewelry to a funeral. For property crimes, the penalties vary wildly. Simple theft might mean returning 30-fold the value, impossible for most, leading to debt slavery. But theft involving deception escalates things. You could face mutilation, the removal of a hand, an ear, or an eye, depending on what body part the judges deem most involved in your crime. For a wool merchant, losing a hand means losing your livelihood. You unconsciously flex your fingers, imagining them gone. In cases of severe commercial fraud, the center judge reads from a newer tablet. The guilty party may be assigned to royal work projects. Everyone knows what this means. The massive building projects always need bodies, and criminals provide free labor. You join the gangs hauling massive stone blocks under the Mesopotamian sun. Your merchant's soft hands bloodied within days, your back broken within months. But then there's the river ordeal, still hanging over the proceedings like a storm cloud. If Bel-Shah-Usur insists on it, you'll face the Euphrates judgment. The river runs high this season, swollen with mountain runoff. Strong swimmers have drowned in its currents, and you haven't swum since childhood. Some say the guilty panic and sink immediately, while the innocent find divine buoyancy. Others whisper that the temple priests know exactly where the safe crossing points are and guide their favored candidates accordingly. The judges seem to be considering a different approach. Given the conflicting testimonies, the center judge muses, perhaps a fine would serve justice better than physical penalties. But Bel-Shah-Usur objects vehemently. The crime demands harsher punishment. The palace's wool supply. He stops abruptly, realizing he's revealed too much. If this is about palace contracts, the stakes are higher than anyone realized. Your legs ache from standing, but you dare not shift position. Any sign of weakness might be interpreted as guilt. Around you, the apparatus of Babylonian justice grinds on, weighing your life against political convenience, temple revenues, and the phases of the moon. You think of your family, waiting at home, probably already planning for the worst. In Babylon, hope is a luxury the accused can't afford, and mercy is rarer than rain in summer. The afternoon sun slants through the high windows, painting golden stripes across the courtroom floor. Your case has dragged on for hours, but now Bel-Shah-Usur makes his fatal mistake. I demand the return of my warehouse property, he declares, producing yet another tablet. The accused has been storing goods there under false pretenses. The judges look puzzled. This is the first mention of any warehouse dispute. Explain, the center judge orders, and you watch your accuser realize he's opened a door better left closed. It emerges that your wool transaction was part of a larger business arrangement, one involving shared warehouse space near the Harbour District. What started as a simple fraud accusation now reveals itself as a commercial partnership gone sour, complete with disputed inventory, unclear contracts, and enough mutual recrimination to keep scribes busy for weeks. The tavern keeper, still standing as an unexpected witness, laughs sharply. Now we reach the truth. These two were partners until the palace contract came through. Then suddenly, mysteriously, one partner finds the other guilty of fraud. The implications hang heavy as summer humidity. Commercial disputes between partners require different legal procedures than fraud cases. Belshazzar has essentially admitted to filing false charges. In Babylon, business partnerships gone wrong can escalate quickly to violence. You've seen it before. Merchants who once shared beer and bread suddenly hiring thugs to settle accounts. The law tries to provide peaceful resolution, but when silver is involved, peace becomes negotiable. The judges know this too. They've probably presided over dozens of cases where fraud was simply code for "my partner got greedy. Present the partnership contracts," the left-hand judge demands. Both you and Belshazzar fumble for excuses. The truth is, like many Babylonian business arrangements, yours was sealed with beer and witnesses rather than formal documentation. Historians still argue whether this was typical or exceptional, but in the harbour district, a handshake and shared drinking bowl constituted a binding agreement until money changed the equation. The centre judge's patience visibly frays. So we have a partnership dispute masquerading as a fraud case, complicated by palace interests and temple taxes. He glares at both of you like a teacher confronting particularly stupid students. Do you realize the court's time you've wasted? In Babylon, wasting judicial time is almost a crime itself, punishable by fines that could bankrupt a small merchant. Your accuser tries to salvage his case. The partnership was dissolved when he practiced deception, but you find your voice, emboldened by his tactical error. The partnership was dissolved when the palace contract arrived and you wanted all profits for yourself. The words tumble out before you can stop them. Speaking out of turn in court risks contempt charges, but you're past caring. The spectators murmur excitedly. This is better than the street performers' shows. Two merchants destroying each other over greed. It's a morality play performed with real consequences. Someone in the gallery shouts, "Tell them about the Syrian deals," before guards restore order. Apparently, your business drama has been neighborhood entertainment for months. The right-hand judge, representing temple interests, sees an opportunity. If this is a partnership dispute, then both parties owe taxes on shared profits. The blood drains from Belshazzar's face. In focusing on destroying you, he's forgotten that admitting to a partnership means admitting to income he probably never reported to temple assessors. The penalty for tax evasion makes fraud look trivial. Temples don't forgive those who steal from the gods. Perhaps, the center judge suggests with dangerous calm, both parties would prefer to resolve this matter privately. It's not really a question. He's offering you both an escape route before the case explodes into something that damages everyone involved. Accept mutual guilt, pay some fines, and walk away before deeper investigations reveal whatever other commercial sins you've both committed. But Belshazzar's pride overcomes his sense. "I demand justice, the river ordeal." The judges exchange looks of pure exasperation. Your accuser wants to risk divine judgment over what's now clearly a petty commercial squabble. Even his own scribes step back slightly, distancing themselves from their patron's stubbornness. The tavern keeper speaks again, uninvited but tolerated. Everyone in the harbour district knows these two. They cheated customers together, bribed dock workers together, watered wine together. Now they want to destroy each other over palace silver. Her disgust is palpable. The river would probably spit them both out. You realize with a mix of horror and relief that your case has transformed. What began as you defending against fraud charges has become mutual assured destruction. The judges, look ready to condemn you both just to clear their docket in Babylonian law. Sometimes the best outcome is when everyone loses equally. At least then, no one can claim favoritism. The center judge calls for another recess, but this time you're escorted to a small antechamber along with Belshazzar Usur. The court requires you to review certain documents. A scribe explains, depositing a stack of tablets between you. The message is clear. Sort out your mess before the judges sort it out for you in ways neither of you will enjoy. The antechamber reeks of old cedar and older grievances. You and your former partner sit across from each other. The table between you laden with evidence of your intertwined business dealings, now forced into proximity. You must confront not just the commercial dispute, but the family complications that underlie everything. For here's what hasn't been mentioned in open court. Belshazzar Usur's daughter was supposed to marry your nephew. The betrothal contract sits among the tablets, another casualty of your feud. Read this. He shoves a tablet toward you. It's a marriage contract, standard in most respects except for the bride price, astronomical by merchant standards. 3 talents of silver, a furnished house, and monthly oil provisions for life. Your family agreed to this, he hisses, then withdrew when the palace contract arrived. The personal grudge behind the commercial dispute finally surfaces like a corpse in the river. In Babylon, marriage contracts are business arrangements wrapped in religious ceremony. Breaking them carries both financial and social penalties. A woman rejected after betrothal might be considered unmarriageable, damaged goods in the cruel calculus of Babylonian society. You want to protest that your nephew withdrew for other reasons, rumors about the girl's behavior at temple festivals, but mentioning that would escalate things beyond any hope of resolution. The tablets reveal other family entanglements. Your sister apparently owes his wife 2 minas of silver for wedding jewelry never delivered. His cousin occupies a shop that technically belongs to your uncle, but hasn't paid rent in 3 years. Every document unveils another layer of interconnected obligations, promises, and betrayals that would take a team of scribes months to untangle. Your nephew insulted my daughter's honor. Belshazzar Usur states flatly, public compensation is required. Here it comes, the real issue. In Babylonian law, a woman's honor is family property, and damage to it demands restitution. But honor claims can't be proven with scales and witnesses. They rest on reputation, gossip, and the ever-shifting sands of public opinion. You pull out your own evidence, a tablet showing his daughter at a tavern, unchaperoned, sharing beer with Syrian merchants. Perhaps we should discuss honor more thoroughly. The threat hangs between you. Historians still argue whether Babylonian women had more freedom than their successors, but everyone agrees that reputation, once lost, couldn't be recovered with all the silver in the royal treasury. The marriage contract includes peculiar clauses. If the bride proves barren, she must provide her husband with a slave girl for procreation, standard enough. But there's also a provision requiring your family to provide a wet nurse from the hill country, speaking only Akkadian, with documented fertility. The specificity suggests previous negotiations went far deeper than you realized. She loved him, Belshazzar says suddenly, his merchant's mask slipping. My daughter, she actually loved your worthless nephew. The admission transforms him from adversary to father, and for a moment, you see past the accumulated grievances to the human pain beneath. In Babylon, love rarely factors into marriage arrangements, but when it does, it complicates everything. You remember now, the girl did seem genuinely distressed when the betrothal was broken. She'd appeared at your house, properly chaperoned but clearly upset, begging your sister to intercede. Your nephew, meanwhile, had seemed relieved, too focused on a dancing girl from the temple district to care about proper marriages. Youth's cruelty cuts deeper than any judge's verdict. The tablets scatter across the table as you both reach for the same document, a property deed for riverfront warehouse space. "That's mine," you both say simultaneously. The deed bears both your seals, but lists neither name clearly. In your haste to secure the property before prices rose, you'd created a legal nightmare that would outlive you both. "We could destroy each other," you observe, stating the obvious. "Your daughter's reputation, my family's contracts, both our businesses," he nods slowly. Mutual destruction appeals to neither of you, but backing down means losing face. In Babylon, merchants who show weakness find themselves prey to every sharp dealer in the market. A scribe enters to check on your progress. He glances at the scattered tablets and shakes his head. The judges grow impatient. They've already discussed referring this to the assembly of merchants. Both you and Belshazzar blanch. The assembly's solutions tend toward the draconian. They once resolved a partnership dispute by selling both parties into slavery and dividing the proceeds among their creditors. Time runs short. Outside, you hear the temple drums marking the afternoon's passage. Soon, the judges will demand resolution or impose their own. The marriage contract lies between you, its broken promises embodied in clay and cuneiform, waiting for someone to make the first move toward peace or mutual annihilation. Back in the main courtroom, the atmosphere has shifted. Temple priests have arrived in force, their shaved heads gleaming like polished eggs in the afternoon light. The high priestess of Ishtar herself sits in the gallery, her presence indicating that your commercial dispute has attracted divine attention, or at least divine financial interest. The temple of Marduk has sent representatives too, creating a careful balance of religious power that makes the judges visibly nervous. The court recognizes the temple of Ishtar's interest in this matter. The right-hand judge announces, practically genuflecting from his seat. "It seems your warehouse property sits on land technically owned by Ishtar's temple, meaning any dispute over ownership involves sacred ground. In Babylon, the gods are the ultimate landlords, and their earthly representatives extract rent with religious fervor." The high priestess rises, her voice cutting through the room like a sacrificial blade. The goddess is disturbed by deception in her precincts. Both merchants have sworn oaths in her temple while conducting business. False oaths defile sacred space. The threat chills your blood. Temple justice operates by different rules than royal courts. Rules involving ritual purification, divine retribution, and occasionally, sacred prostitution as penance. Belshazzar tries to speak, but a priest of Marduk interrupts. The warehouse stores grain designated for temple offerings. Any fraud involving these goods insults the great god himself. Now you're caught between two divine jurisdictions, each claiming precedence. Historians still argue whether temple courts held superior authority to royal ones, but watching the judges squirm, the answer seems obvious. The center judge attempts to maintain secular control. The royal court has primary jurisdiction in commercial matters. But the high priestess laughs, a sound like bronze bells. Commercial matters involving sacred property transcend mortal jurisdiction. Perhaps the merchants would prefer temple judgment. The question hangs in the air like incense, sweet but suffocating. You've heard about temple trials. Instead of testimony and evidence, they rely on divine signs, the flight patterns of birds, the arrangement of oil on water, the writhing of sacrificial animals' entrails. At least in royal court, you can argue with witnesses. You can't cross-examine a sheep's liver or dispute the testimony of sacred smoke. We respectfully request the royal court maintain jurisdiction, you say, finding rare agreement with Belshazzar, who nods vigorously. But the damage is done. The judges now must balance not just palace and temple interests, but competing temple interests. The priest of Marduk and priestess of Ishtar eye each other like rival merchants at an auction. A scribe reads from temple records, documenting every transaction conducted on sacred land. The list goes on forever, apparently. You and Belshazzar have been accidentally committing religious offenses for years and using temple warehouse space for private storage, failing to provide proper offerings before major transactions, conducting business during sacred festivals when commerce should cease. Each violation carries potential penalties ranging from fines to ritual servitude. There's also the matter of the sacred prostitute, the priestess adds casually, and both you and Belshazzar freeze. She smiles, enjoying your discomfort. The one you both patronized while discussing business in the temple precincts. She reports you spoke of cheating your customers while in the goddess's very bed. The crowd gasps. Mixing sacred and profane business violates fundamental taboos. The judges look ready to wash their hands of the entire matter. The left-hand judge suggests, perhaps this case should transfer to temple jurisdiction entirely. But the palace can't afford to lose control of commercial law to the temples. The center judge rallies. The royal court will consider all aspects, both sacred and secular. What follows is a jurisdictional nightmare that would make modern lawyers weep. The temples want their cut of disputed revenues. The palace wants to maintain legal supremacy. You and Belshazzar want to escape with your lives and livelihoods intact. The various scribes frantically record competing claims while trying to determine which legal code applies. Hammurabi's ancient laws, recent palace decrees, or the even older temple regulations that predate written history. The high priestess makes a proposal. Let the merchants undergo temple purification. If they survive the rituals, we'll consider the sacred violations cleansed. You don't like the way she emphasizes if they survive. Temple purification can involve anything from simple bathing to ordeals that make the river test look like a pleasant swim. Meanwhile, the priest of Marduk objects, Ishtar cannot claim soul purification rights. The warehouse sits equidistant between our temples. They begin arguing about divine surveying rights and which god noticed the land first. The theological dispute quickly devolves into petty bickering about whose temple has better festivals and higher quality sacrificial animals. You catch Belshazzar's eye. For the first time since this ordeal began, you see the same thought reflected there. You're both drowning in forces beyond your control. The gods themselves seem to be using your case as a proxy war for their own territorial disputes. Whatever the outcome, you'll be fortunate to emerge with more than the clothes on your backs. A new player enters the drama, a scribe you've never seen before, wearing the distinctive red sash of the royal archives. He carries himself with the peculiar arrogance of those who control information, and the judges immediately defer to him. I bear records relevant to these proceedings, he announces, producing tablets that look significantly older than anything presented so far. These merchants, he continues, settling into the witness position like a cat claiming a sunbeam, have an interesting history with documentation. He begins reading from his tablets, and your heart sinks. Every contract you've ever sealed, every receipt thumbprinted, every legal document bearing your name. He has them all. The royal scribes, it seems, maintain files on every citizen who conducts significant business. But here's where things get strange. As he reads, you notice discrepancies. A contract you signed 5 years ago suddenly includes clauses you don't remember. A receipt for barley transforms into one for copper. The scribe's stylus, you realize, has been busy improving the historical record to suit present needs. In Babylon, literacy is power, and those who control the clay control the truth. Belshazzar objects to a particularly egregious revision. That tablet claims I sold diseased sheep to the temple. I've never sold sheep in my life. The scribe smiles thinly. Perhaps your memory fails. The tablet clearly shows your seal. And indeed it does, or something close enough to pass casual inspection. Historians still argue whether document forgery was widespread in ancient Mesopotamia, but watching this scribe work, you have your answer. The judges seem unbothered by these historical revisions. They're more interested in what the scribe knows about your current dispute. He produces a tablet that makes everyone lean forward. Last month, these two merchants were seen meeting secretly at the harbor. A witness reports they discussed dividing territories and eliminating competition. The implication is clear. You're not just former partners but potential conspirators against other merchants. You want to scream that the meeting was about dissolving your partnership, not creating a merchant cartel. But the scribe has already moved on, reading from another tablet about suspicious gatherings at your warehouse. Every innocent business meeting becomes, in his telling, a shadowy conspiracy. The power of written records lies not in their accuracy, but in their permanence. Once pressed into clay and baked, lies become history. Furthermore, the scribe continues, clearly enjoying himself. There are questions about literacy itself. He produces examples of your writing and Belshazzar's, comparing them to various disputed documents. Notice the peculiar formation of the key symbol. Both merchants write it identically, most unusual unless they learned from the same teacher. He's implying you've been forging each other's documents, or worse, collaborating in fraud while pretending to be enemies. The tavern keeper, still present despite having given her testimony hours ago, snorts loudly. Everyone in the harbour district learned writing from old Naburimani. Of course they form symbols the same way. But her common-sense observation gets lost in the scribe's theatrical presentation. He's building a narrative where every coincidence becomes conspiracy. Every shared business practice becomes evidence of collusion. The deeper issue emerges slowly. This scribe isn't just any records keeper. He's connected to a rival merchant group that wants your warehouse space. If both you and Belshazzar are convicted, your property becomes available for royal redistribution. The Scribes Guild, working with merchant coalitions, has turned your personal dispute into an opportunity for a property grab. I have here, the scribe produces his masterpiece, a tablet predating all others, showing the warehouse land belongs to neither merchant but to the crown, held in trust for naval supplies. The document looks authentic, bears official seals, and completely invalidates both your claims. Never mind that you've never heard of this supposed trust, or that the tablet's clay seems suspiciously fresh for an ancient document. The judges examine this new evidence with growing excitement. If the land belongs to the crown, they can resolve everything neatly, confiscate the property, fine both of you for illegal occupation, and close a case that's become far too complicated. The temple representatives object. But even they can't argue with royal documentation, however dubious its provenance. You realize with dawning horror that you're watching literacy weaponized. In a society where maybe 1 in 100 can read, those who control writing control reality. The scribe hasn't just presented evidence, he's rewritten history to serve present purposes. Every tablet he's produced tells a story, and stories, in Babylon, carry the weight of law. Belshazzar finally grasps the situation too. "We're being robbed," he whispers, loud enough for you to hear, not by each other, but by the scribes. The irony is bitter. You've spent months trying to destroy each other, only to discover you're both victims of a literate conspiracy that makes your petty fraud allegations look like children's games. The afternoon shadows lengthen across the courtroom floor as a parade of increasingly suspicious witnesses takes the stand. A dock worker claims you threatened him with curses if he didn't falsify cargo manifests. A temple accountant swears Belshazzar offered him silver to alter tax records. Each testimony feels rehearsed, too perfect, like actors in a sacred drama who've practiced their lines once too often. Then comes the truly audacious moment. The red-sashed scribe produces a witness who claims to be your former business partner from 10 years ago. Except you've never seen this man before in your life. He spins an elaborate tale of corruption, describing deals you never made in cities you've never visited. When you protest, the judges silence you. The witness has provided documentation. They note, as if clay tablets can't lie, the corruption runs deeper than the Euphrates in flood season. You notice small signals between witnesses and court officials. A touched ear here, a scratched nose there. It's a silent language of bribery and influence that everyone sees but no one acknowledges. The bailiff who brought you here this morning now avoids your eyes, counting something in his pouch that clinks like silver. Belshazzar's own witnesses have mysteriously vanished. They were summoned, his scribe insists, but the court herald shrugs. No one answered at their homes. You suspect they've been paid to disappear or threatened into silence. In Babylon's legal system, witness tampering is illegal in theory, but as common as flies in summer. Everyone knows the best witness is one who never appears. The tavern keeper tries one more intervention. "This whole trial stinks worse than month-old fish," she declares. Everyone knows these two fools are being set up, but the center judge cuts her off. "Unless you have documentary evidence, your opinions are not relevant." She produces a small tablet. "Actually, I do. A receipt showing the red-sashed scribe meeting with Shamash-Idi, the merchant who covets their warehouse." The courtroom goes silent. The scribe's face cycles through several colors before settling on the pale shade of river clay. Shamash-Idi is well known, a merchant with royal connections and flexible ethics. If the tavern keeper can prove conspiracy, but the red-sashed scribe recovers quickly. That tablet is clearly forged. Notice the seal impression. And so begins another round of accusations about document authenticity that makes your head spin. Perhaps, the left-hand judge suggests with oily smoothness, all parties would benefit from a private resolution. He's offering everyone a face-saving exit, drop the charges, pay some bribes, and pretend this never happened. But the stakes have grown too high. The rival merchant faction smells blood. The temples want their cut, and the palace sees an opportunity to reclaim valuable property. You watch a messenger slip the bailiff another pouch, heavier than the first. The bailiff then whispers to a court scribe, who makes notations on his tablet. The verdict is being written before arguments conclude, purchased with silver and sealed with corruption. Historians still argue whether Babylonian justice was generally fair or systemically corrupt, but from where you stand, the answer seems obvious. The red-sashed scribe makes his final play. I've discovered additional evidence of treason. The word hangs in the air like an executioner's axe. Treason charges change everything. No fines or compensation, just death. These merchants corresponded with Elamite traders, potentially revealing state secrets about grain stores. The accusation is so outrageous, even the corrupt judges look skeptical. But once spoken, it must be investigated. Produce this correspondence, the center judge orders. The scribe makes a show of searching his tablets. Unfortunately, the evidence was destroyed, burned by the accused to hide their crimes. But witnesses saw the smoke. What witnesses? When? The details don't matter. In a system where literacy equals authority, the scribe's word carries more weight than your protests. Belshazzar breaks. Enough. I'll confess to the original fraud if you drop these insane charges. But his confession opens new problems. If he admits to fraud, does that implicate you as his partner? The judges confer, trying to navigate the legal maze they've helped create. The simple commercial dispute has mutated into a monster that threatens to devour everyone involved. You realize that justice, in this place, is just another commodity, bought, sold, and traded like wool or barley. The scales of justice tip not toward truth, but toward whoever brings the heaviest purse. The goddess Justice may be blind, but her priests peek under the blindfold when silver is involved. Your fate rests not on innocence or guilt, but on whether you're worth more convicted or free. The corruption has a peculiar honesty to it. Everyone knows the system is rotten, so everyone plays accordingly. The fiction of impartial justice continues because the alternative, admitting the whole structure is a marketplace of verdicts, would collapse society. So the charade continues, with each participant pretending not to notice the other's pretense, a mass delusion maintained by mutual benefit and fear. The sun hangs low in the sky, painting the courtroom in shades of blood and gold. The judges announce they'll hear final arguments before rendering verdict. You're permitted to speak one last time, to make whatever plea might save you from the various fates that have been threatened throughout this interminable day. Your throat feels like sand, but you step forward. Great judges, you begin, using the formal address that might buy a sliver of mercy. I came here accused of simple fraud. Now I stand accused of conspiracy, treason, sacrilege, and crimes I've never heard of. I ask you, if I were guilty of all these things, would I be a humble wool merchant or a demon in human form? A few spectators chuckle nervously. Humor in court is risky, but you're past caring about risks. You invoke every god you can think of, starting with Shamash and working through the pantheon. Let divine justice reveal the truth, you declare, though privately you wonder if the gods have better things to do than sort out commercial disputes. Still, the formula must be followed. You swear oaths so elaborate that even the judges look impressed. In Babylon, a good oath is like a good wine, complex, full-bodied, and potentially fatal if mishandled. Then comes your masterstroke. I call upon the ghost of my father. May he rest in the underworld to witness my innocence. The courtroom stirs uneasily. Invoking the dead is serious business, the kind of thing that invites supernatural retribution if done falsely. If I lie, may his spirit haunt my household for 7 generations. It's the nuclear option of oath-making, and you see even the corrupt scribe shift uncomfortably. Belshazzar follows with his own plea. though his heart isn't in it. He's already confessed to fraud, trying to minimize damage. His argument focuses on mitigation. Yes, he exaggerated the charges, but only because you ruined his daughter's marriage prospects. Then, he actually tears his robe for dramatic effect, revealing an impressive collection of religious amulets underneath. The man came prepared for every possible divine intervention. The red-sashed scribe makes his final statement, weaving together all the accusations into a narrative that would make epic poets jealous. In his telling, you and Belshazzar aren't just corrupt merchants, but threats to the very foundation of Babylonian society. If such men go unpunished, he intones, chaos will consume our great city like locusts consume grain. The metaphor is overwrought, but the judges nod appreciatively. Then something unexpected happens. A very old priest enters, so ancient he seems held together by will and temple incense. Everyone recognizes him. Marduk Nadin, the high priest emeritus who supposedly retired years ago. His appearance in court is like a visitation from the past. Even the judges rise slightly in respect. "I've been listening," he wheezes, his voice like wind through dry reeds. "This case reminds me of one from 40 years ago. 2 merchants, fighting over warehouse rights, while scribes conspired to steal from both." He fixes the red-sashed scribe with eyes that have seen every possible human failing. The names change, but the crimes remain constant as the stars. His intervention shifts the atmosphere. This is a man who remembers when the current judges were junior scribes, who has seen corruption cycles repeat like seasons. His presence makes everyone feel small and temporary. "The gods grow weary of such games," he continues. "Perhaps it's time for divine signs to guide us." The judges eagerly seize on this divinely provided exit strategy. "Yes, let heaven guide our decision." The center judge agrees. They call for the temple diviners, who arrive with their tools, blessed oil, sacred water, a cage of doves whose flight patterns will reveal cosmic truth. The courtroom transforms from legal venue to religious theater. The divination begins. Oil spreads across water in patterns that the priestess interprets with practiced vagueness. "The gods see deception," she announces, which could mean anything. The doves are released, circling the courtroom in panicked confusion before finding an exit. They fly toward the setting sun. The diviner notes, "This indicates judgment should wait for another day." But the old priest shakes his head. "The gods have already spoken through simpler signs. These men," he indicates you and Belshazzar, "are fools but not traitors. This one," pointing at the red-sash scribe, "serves masters other than justice." The accusation hangs in the air like incense smoke. The judges find themselves in an impossible position. Ignore the old priest and risk divine wrath. Accept his judgment and anger whoever's paying them. The center judge makes a decision that's either brilliant or desperate. The court requires additional time to consider heavenly guidance. All parties will return tomorrow for final verdict. It's not resolution, but it's reprieve. As guards prepare to escort you out, you realize you'll spend tonight wondering if tomorrow brings freedom, slavery, or death. The old priest catches your eye and winks, actually winks, before shuffling out. In all this corruption and conspiracy, you found one honest man, and he's older than some of the tablets being used as evidence against you. Dawn breaks grey and reluctant over Babylon, matching your mood as guards once again escort you to the courthouse. You've spent a sleepless night contemplating your fate, while your wife prepared for the worst, hiding what few valuables you possess, arranging for the children to stay with relatives if you don't return. The walk to court feels longer today, each step heavy with dread. The courtroom buzzes with unusual energy. Overnight, word has spread about the old priest's intervention, and the galleries overflow with spectators. Street vendors sell breakfast bread and diluted beer to the crowd, turning your potential doom into a commercial opportunity. You notice several scribes from competing guilds, here to see if their rival in the red sash faces consequences for his overreach. The judges enter looking haggard, as if they too spent the night wrestling with political pressures and divine threats. The center judge's elaborate beard shows signs of nervous tugging. The left-hand judge keeps glancing at the palace doors, while the right-hand judge clutches new prayer beads. Whatever negotiations occurred in darkness have left their marks. The court has deliberated. The center judge begins, his voice lacking yesterday's authority. We have consulted legal precedents, divine signs, and, he pauses, choosing words carefully, concerned parties. That last phrase speaks volumes. The rival merchant factions, temple hierarchies, and palace officials have all weighed in, turning your case into a proxy battle for larger conflicts. Belshazzar stands beside you, and for the first time since this ordeal began, you're united in fear. Yesterday's animosity seems petty compared to the forces now arrayed around you. He whispers, "My daughter sends word. She forgives your nephew." It's a small gesture, but in this moment of potential annihilation, human kindness feels precious as gold. The judge continues reading from a freshly prepared tablet. Regarding the charge of fraud in wool transactions, he details findings that would be comical if your life didn't hang in the balance. The wool was indeed substandard, but not criminally so. The weights were disputed, but within acceptable margins. It's the kind of commercial disagreement that happens daily in every market from here to Egypt. However, and there's always a however in Babylonian justice, the court finds both parties guilty of wasting judicial resources with frivolous accusations. The crowd murmurs. It's a clever compromise. Convict everyone a little bit. Satisfy no one completely, but avoid the extremes that could trigger unrest. You'll both find amounts that will hurt, but not destroy. Ordered to pay court costs that will enrich various officials. But the red-sashed scribe isn't finished. He rises, face flushed with indignation. The court ignores evidence of treason. The old priest, present again despite his age, cuts him off with a gesture. "Young man, I knew your grandfather. He'd be ashamed to see you pervert literacy for profit." The public shaming hits harder than any legal argument. The scribe's carefully constructed authority crumbles. The verdicts cascade like dominoes. You and Belshazzar must divide the warehouse property according to a formula so complex it'll take years to implement. The marriage contract between your families is declared void, but without penalties, letting everyone save face. Various fines are assessed, payable in installments that guarantee you'll remain under court supervision indefinitely. Then comes the surprise. The court also finds irregularities in documentation presented by the Royal Archive, the judge announces, carefully not looking at the red sash scribe. These matters will be referred to the Scribal Guild for internal review. It's bureaucratic language for "you're finished." The scribe's face transforms from red to white as he realizes his own guild will now investigate him, and scribal justice makes royal courts look merciful. The temple representatives announce their own verdicts. Minor purification rituals for you and Belshazzar. Annoying, but not fatal. The sacred prostitute who testified about your business discussions receives a promotion, suggesting her testimony was more politically motivated than divinely inspired. The temples extract their percentage of fines, ensuring the gods remain properly funded. As final documents are prepared, you realize you've survived, but at cost. Your business is crippled, your reputation damaged, your future mortgaged to court payments. But you're alive, free, and not rowing in a royal galley or feeding fish in the Euphrates. In Babylonian terms, that's victory. The crowd begins dispersing, disappointed by the anticlimactic ending. They wanted blood, drama, someone thrown to crocodiles. Instead, they got bureaucratic compromise and distributed penalties. The tavern keeper catches your eye and nods. She'll extend credit until you recover. Small mercies in a harsh world. You and Belshazzar walk out together, united by shared catastrophe. Drink, he suggests, and you nod. There's a tavern near the courthouse that specializes in serving the recently tried. As you sit with beer that tastes of survival, you both avoid discussing how you'll explain the financial disaster to your wives. Tomorrow's problems can wait. Today, you're free men in Babylon, and that's enough. The tavern fills with others from the morning's trials. A pottery merchant who escaped slavery by one judge's vote. A priestess cleared of embezzlement but stripped of rank. A scribe whose hand wasn't cut off for forgery only because he proved someone else forged his forgeries. You're all survivors of Babylonian justice, bearing invisible scars and visible financial wounds, united by the shared experience of dancing on the edge of destruction. As beer flows and tongues loosen, stories emerge. The pottery merchant reveals that his accuser died mysteriously 2 nights ago. Bad fish. Everyone agrees with knowing looks. The priestess mentions that certain tablets from her trial have already vanished from the archive, purchased by parties unknown for purposes unspoken. Evidence, it seems, has a shorter shelf life than fresh bread in this city. You learn from courthouse regulars that your trial was relatively mild, last month. A grain merchant accused of shorting temple supplies was tested by having molten metal poured on his chest. He survived, barely, but now sells vegetables in the outer districts. His chest a mass of scars that serve as walking advertisement for legal compliance. Another merchant simply disappeared after his trial, leaving only rumors and unpaid debts. The trick, an old scribe advises, is to be valuable enough to find but not important enough to make an example of. You've inadvertently struck that balance, worth more alive and paying installments than dead or enslaved. Belshazzar raises his cup in mock toast. To mediocrity, our salvation. The bitter joke draws rueful laughter from your fellow survivors. Night falls as you finally head home through streets that feel different now. Every scribe's stall represents potential documentary danger. Each temple guard might be tomorrow's dawn visitor. The familiar landmarks of your neighborhood, the baker's shop, the corner shrine, the communal well, seem fragile, temporary, subject to legal reinterpretation at any moment. Your wife waits at the door, relief and worry warring on her face. The children peek from behind her skirts, uncertain whether you're the same father who left yesterday morning or some court-changed stranger. You're both, and neither. Marked now by your brush with the grinding wheels of justice, wiser about the price of commercial ambition in a world where laws serve power rather than truth. Inside, over a meal of bread and lentils that taste better than any palace feast, you explain the verdict. Your wife calculates on her fingers, determining how many years of payment stretch ahead. Your eldest son, approaching apprenticeship age, asks if he should still learn the merchant trade. The question hangs heavy. Do you condemn him to your life of risks and rivals, or steer him towards safer but poorer occupations? Learn writing first, you decide, but from honest scribes, if any exist. It's a paradox. Literacy brings power, but also temptation. Still, in Babylon, illiteracy means perpetual victimhood to those who wield the stylus. Your son nods solemnly, perhaps understanding that today's trial taught lessons no school could provide. The night grows late, and exhaustion finally claims you. But sleep brings no peace. Dreams filled with clay tablets that rewrite themselves. Judges whose faces shift like river mud, and the endless echo of legal formulas. You wake repeatedly, checking that you're still in your bed and not some prison cell, that the morning summons was yesterday's nightmare, not tomorrow's. Dawn arrives too soon, bringing the reality of your new life. First payment due at the courthouse within 7 days. Purification rituals at 3 different temples. Monthly reports to court scribes who'll monitor your business for signs of repeated offense. The warehouse dispute with Belshazzar, to untangle through negotiations that promise to be as pleasant as tooth extraction. Yet as you rise and prepare for another day's survival in Babylon, you feel oddly grateful. The city's justice system tried to devour you and failed, or at least settled for just a taste. You've seen its corruption, survived its processes, learned its bitter lessons. Knowledge earned through suffering has peculiar value, like scars that ache before storms. Warning of dangers others can't perceive. Your neighbors greet you differently now, with the wary respect accorded those who faced the judges and walked away. The baker extends credit without asking. The water carrier shares gossip about which judges accepted bribes yesterday. You're part of an invisible brotherhood of the tried and survived. Citizens who know exactly how thin the line between prosperity and destruction runs in this ancient city. Looking back at your house, where your family begins another day, you make silent promises. No more ambitious partnerships. No more deals that attract judicial attention. You'll be the invisible merchant, successful enough to eat, but never enough to envy. It's not the life you dreamed, but it's life nonetheless. And after yesterday, that seems miracle enough. The great ziggurat of Marduk catches the morning sun, its peak piercing heaven, while its base roots deep in earthly corruption. Between those extremes, ordinary people like you navigate the treacherous middle ground, hoping to avoid the attention of both gods and judges. You shoulder your merchant's bag, lighter now with legal fees, and step into another Babylonian day, wiser if poorer, scarred but breathing, a survivor of justice in the cradle of civilization. The sun rises fully now, painting Babylon in shades of gold and possibility. You allow yourself one last look at the courthouse in the distance, then turn away. Some buildings are best appreciated from afar, some experiences better left unrepeated. You've had your day in a Babylonian courtroom and lived to tell the tale. Once is more than enough. As you make your way to what remains of your business, the city awakens around you. Merchants calling wares, priests chanting prayers, scribes sharpening their styluses for another day of documenting, revising, and occasionally destroying lives. The eternal dance continues, and you're still part of it. Stepped on, but not crushed. Tried, but not terminated. You pass the courthouse one final time on your way to the market. New accusers gather at its doors, Fresh defendants stumble in with guards. Another day's drama begins. You quicken your pace, grateful to be walking past rather than into those doors. Let others discover what you now know, that in Babylon, justice is just another merchant, and her prices are always higher than you expect. Tomorrow you'll begin the long work of rebuilding reputation, business, family trust. But today, this moment, walking free through morning streets while others face their trials, you understand the most important lesson Babylon's courts taught you. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning your case, but simply surviving it. And so you walk on, another soul in the great city's endless story, carrying hard-won wisdom about law, power, and the price of ambition in humanity's first civilization. The gods watch from their temples, the judges prepare for new cases, and life in Babylon continues, eternal, corrupted, magnificent, and terrible as it has always been. As you drift off to sleep, let the sounds of ancient Babylon fade away, the distant calls of merchants, the temple bells, the murmur of countless lives lived in the shadow of ziggurats and laws older than memory. You've walked in sandals 4,000 years old, felt the weight of cuneiform judgments, survived the grinding wheels of humanity's first legal system. Rest now, knowing that whatever tomorrow's troubles in your modern world, at least you won't wake to Babylonian guards at your door, won't face judges who weigh your life against political convenience, won't navigate justice in a world where literacy itself is a weapon. Sweet dreams, and be grateful for whatever imperfect justice your own time provides. It's still an improvement over spending another day in a Babylonian courtroom.